Looks like John in California. You're on with Tracie and Aron. Thanks for calling. It says here that the Bible is for your heart, not your head, and you have personal testimony on how prayer works because your wife was cured.
Oh, my gosh. This is the Kirk Cameron circumvent.
Hey, he's on live.
I know, but it just...
How about a little kindness here to welcome John?
Let me just give it up the sentence. It sounds like it's going to be, I'm predicting, the Kirk Cameron argument of circumvent the intellect.
Maybe, but let's let John tell us that. So go ahead, John. You're on the air.
Awesome. How are you guys?
Good.
Doing
hope
very
you're
well.
Doing well as well. So what's on your mind today?
Awesome. Well, you know what's funny is that I saw your Lake Elsinore post, and there's been people who've been asking for evidence and stuff, but I basically just want to share my personal testimony. I'll also turn you guys on to a resource that you guys can reach out to them and talk to them about this anytime you want. I'll tell you about the ministry where I had this done. It's really outrageous. But my wife was formally diagnosed with PTSD and fibromyalgia. And I don't know if you're familiar with fibromyalgia, but it's debated among doctors about what it really is.
Yeah.
Whether it's skeletal muscle, what no one really knows.
It's just pain, right? It's like weird pain that can't be explained.
Yeah.
Exactly. And whenever I would take my wife and my stepson to like Knott's Berry Farm or a theme park, or we'd try to go out to do something fun, you know, her muscles would just flare up at random times and so forth. We didn't know what happened. And randomly, she would just have really spastic attacks out of nowhere. She'd have flashbacks and, you know, from her childhood, because she had a really rough childhood of rape and abuse and, you know, a number of different things. So we went to this man. His name is Brother Mike Smith. He has a ministry out in Phoenix, Arizona. He's a really successful psychiatrist, a secular one, for about 33 years, until he finally gave his life to the Lord. And now he has a healing ministry, and, you know, he prays the way Jesus prays, the way he teaches out of Matthew. And I was really skeptical. You know, I'm a minister now. I have a horse therapy program that I'm developing and so forth, and for, you know, autistic kids, military vets. And I'm a practical guy. I like, you know, tangible things because people can see it, feel it, experience it. It's real. So,
so what hospital does this faith healer work in?
I'm not sure he had a private practice, I think he did, if I'm not mistaken. He's hardcorechristianity.com. His name is Brother Mike Smith. I got to
tell you that the words hardcorechristianity.com does not instill any confidence in me.
Well, I don't blame you. Hopefully this testimony will. Like I said, if you want to talk to all the family members.
I don't care about testimony. If he's healing people, then I'm going to see results. We will see, this happened a number of times. I mean, people that go to work for the big faith healers, like Oral Roberts, for example. He had one of his security people said he just wanted confirmation that, you know, when these people come up in the wheelchairs and then they get healed and they walk off the stage, he wants confirmation that those people actually lived 4 years in those wheelchairs before they got up and walked off stage. He wanted documentation that these miracles were really happening. And eventually, of course, Oral Roberts finally concedes to give an answer and says, there's a lot of exaggeration in this business, which tells me all I really need to know, apart from the fact that we don't have any documentation that anybody ever actually faith heals amputees or paraplegics, you know, people that have, you know, damage to the spinal cord and they're stuck in a wheelchair and then they suddenly get up and walk. That does not really happen from faith healers. So we have exactly what documentation do we have that any faith healer ever actually healed anybody?
Okay. Well, the premise of what you're saying right there is the problem. You see, because if we go by the word of the Bible, it's not...
Which we should not ever do.
Right. It's not Brother Mike that did the healing. It was Jesus.
Okay, so what documentation do we have that your favorite first-century Palestinian rabbi ever healed anybody?
Well, wait a minute. I have a quick question, like a quick point, because I was married and my spouse at the time had a super, super advanced form of a very deadly form of cancer. And he went through the standard treatment and it failed. And we were told by the oncologist, I have nothing more to offer. And so we went into a research trial. And I just want to plug Angel Flights. Thank you so much for flying him to treatments for free. Volunteer pilots, you're awesome. And I also want to say that he went into that treatment at the University of Virginia. They had a research trial on cancer vaccines, and he survived, and he's more than 10 years out, and he is a cancer survivor now. Like he's at the, now this is well thank the oncologist, right?
Let's not make too hasty an assumption.
People now keep in mind that in his category of this particular cancer, there's an 10 to 20% survival rate, which means that 80 to 90% of the people that went into that trial were not expected to survive, assuming that the trial was, just testing and they didn't know that it would work. Now, people ask me all the time, so that trial saved his life, right? And I'm like, you know what? We don't know. We don't know because he had a surgery prior to the trial, and the trial was to stop another recurrence. And so maybe the surgery removed all the detectable cancer, and maybe that was all the cancer there was. So I don't know that that trial cured him. Even though he was in that trial and he survived and he had super low odds of survival, I don't know. I can't say the trial saved him. I can't say the vaccine saved him. Even with the vaccine now becoming the more standard treatment, I can't say that that's what saved his life. And here's the thing. I knew somebody else who had a spouse with a super low survival rate, which was more like 5%, and they went with an alternative medical solution, which at the time I kept my mouth shut because I know that feeling of being completely desperate. And so they did what they felt like they had to do, and I just said, let them do something. Because if they go into the standard treatment, he's going to be sick in chemo, and he's probably not going to survive anyway. And if they do nothing, this person who's left is going to feel like I should have tried something, anything, even just some desperate choice.
Yeah,
but here's the thing: he died. But one of the things that she went for was that there were testimonials from people who didn't die who took this alternative treatment. The problem is the people who died aren't around to say it didn't work for me. The only people that you have left are the people who did survive, who are now believers because it cured them, is what they think in their heads. So the people who are left and survived it, you have to know how many people didn't survive it to make any kind of conclusions about what happened here. Right? So how many people weren't? It's less important to me that you have a testimonial about how this helped your spouse than it is to know how many people went home and their spouses were just as bad or never got better, or it came back after a month and was just as bad. We don't have those people talking about it because they left. They left in non-belief.
Right. Well, that is the thing, and Scripture does touch on it. There are some people who get delivered, who get healed, and it does come back. And this is a very difficult
Then they didn't get healed, did they?
Right. Well, hold on. I want to touch on some things real quick because you guys are super smart. So first
I'm not super smart.
You guys, I hear you guys talking. I was sitting in the back hearing you guys talking about donuts and barbecue and all kinds of stuff. And just the conversation alone, the scale of the dialogue, you guys are very intelligent. I'm very honored to be on the show.
Takes brain cells to talk barbecue.
Right. And the other thing, too, is what I really want to preface this with is, first of all, Jennifer, thank you for being candid. Thank you for being vulnerable.
Tracie.
We live in a culture where it's devastating to be vulnerable. You can get steamrolled by this world. So basically, and you may not agree with this, and that's okay. This is how I've come to peace with it and how I wrap my mind around it. Whenever I ask God for something, whenever I pursue healing through him, God usually answers the prayer one of three ways. Number one, yes, it happens immediately, just like my wife. It hasn't come back. I have several witnesses. I can give you her number, and she'll most likely, because she's kind of mad at me right now, but most likely she'll give you, the personal medical information that verifies it's true. And like I said, Brother Mike Smith also has a lot of medical verification as well. You can email him at mike@hardcorechristianity.com. This isn't just some hocus-pocus thing. It happens.
Okay,
so there's a yes, there's a what else, a no?
So the first answer from God is yes, it happens right now. The second one is yes, but it's going to be a process. I've seen people go through chemotherapy.
And what is the means of falsification?
Wait a minute, though. I want to get this. Is there an option for a no?
Yeah.
Well, actually, that's the best one. So the first one, yes, process. The third one is it's exceedingly abundantly above what you're asking for. If you remember in the gospel, Martha went forward to Jesus.
Yeah, wait a minute, though. We don't need to go into the gospel.
I don't need to know.
So what you're saying is when you ask God for help, you get a yes, a no, and a wait. right? Like it's a process.
Wait, what I'm saying is you get a yes or no, or what you're asking for is not big enough.
What is the difference between asking God to help you and just letting crap happen if the answer is sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work, and sometimes you apply some stuff for a while and
you
then
just
it
accept
works.
that it's God's will no matter what happens.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happens if you do just regular crap and don't pray.
Now, the scientific approach would be that you would, if you have something that you think is going to be real and works, then you make predictions about how that works, right? And then there are ways to test it. And if there's ways to test that hypothesis, there has to be a way of potentially falsifying to show whether it's wrong. Now, you're never going to prove a hypothesis correct. But what you're trying to do is to determine if you're not correct. If what you imagine is not true, then how would you prove it false?
Right, but also I'm looking at like the person that had the 5% cure rate, right? Like my friend's husband who died. He had a 5% chance of survival if he went with the standard treatment, which would probably have made him super ill, and then he was probably going to die anyway. 95% chance of mortality. So right. I'm looking at that, and I'm saying there's a 5% success rate with the treatment that he would want to try and a 95% fail rate. So what is the fail rate of this guy that you're promoting?
The fail rate? Well, that's, like I said, we're just touching the surface.
How many no's does he get? How many no's happen?
How many exceedingly abundantly above? Not very many. I'd probably say if I had to look at the testimonies, probably 1 in 50.
I'm not looking at the testimonies because the testimonies are people who got good results. I'm saying, what are the rates of fail?
The testimonies are from the people who had the surgery to correct the issue and then thanked God instead of the doctors.
Right.
The testimony is meaningless. What data can we show?
Okay. I guess my question then deductively then would be what data satisfies your doubt, basically?
My problem, the reason I have doubt is that there's absolutely nothing.
No, what you do,
ever.
I can tell you how to do it, right? So you take a group of people who are suffering from this thing, and you take the standard treatment, and you compare what this guy is doing with these people to the standard treatment, and you say, hey, the people who were all professionally diagnosed with this, when they apply the faith healing, they are cured at a higher rate than are cured by the professional psychiatric industry of PTSD, or they are helped or it's mitigated in ways that are like better than the standard treatment. That's how you test anything that is being challenged, that is challenging a standard treatment. So the question would be, have these studies been done? Not are there testimonials, but has he sat down and done like a group of people where it's like, here's what they were supposed to do. They've all rejected the standard treatment. They've come to me instead, and I'm going to faith heal them. Does he actually get a long-term result of cure or mitigation that is better than the treatment of the psychiatrist, not just in your opinion, but where has he published this? Where are the number of subjects and the number that were helped and the number that weren't helped?
How has it been tested?
And his conclusions as to why certain people weren't helped and why certain people were helped. I mean, he has to.
And what about the control group? What about the control group that prayed to the wrong God just to see how this experiment would work?
Right. So you guys are asking a lot of great questions. I got to try and take them one at a time.
Well, if you were putting forward a medicine and saying it works better than the standard treatment, you would have to test it in this way.
And what I was starting to say, there's absolutely nothing ever to imply that a God ever interceded on anything. I mean, when you look at any vaccine, the reason that any medicine works, if you get into the college level biology, they can explain how the medicine works, why it works. In a transfer of molecules level, how it works. But when we're talking about faith healing, we got nothing that makes any kind of intelligible sense. You just gotta believe in the right mythology. And you know what? The funny thing is, it doesn't matter which mythology it is. It doesn't matter which God you believe to, because people claim faith healing success for tantric magic.
Right. And I mean, that's going to be another problem, right? So, for example, let's say this guy prays over people and then they're healed. I don't know what his process is, but let's say that these people come in, he applies this process, and they actually are cured or it is mitigated more than the standard treatment. We still would have to demonstrate the process includes a God and that it isn't something about what he's doing that that is still working even without a God.
So you're talking about a guy who started out with a medical career, in which we have public records for his success and failure rate in the way that he does treatment for people. And then he shifted from his training in a medical career to faith healing. Do we have the data that we can compare to see whether his success rate has actually improved? And I don't mean in testimonials.
Yeah, because the person who was doing the alternative medications, like the alternative, I think it was some kind of low chemo treatment, he claimed that he had, all kinds of testimonials too, but he had failed to produce that for Congress.
Yeah, with the people that go through reflexology.
And I just want to say, that was a special case. The guy had testified before Congress, and they told him, come back when you have more data. There was something going on with that where he did come and testify over some health issues. And so some people were impressed with that, saying oh, look, he was prominent enough to come and testify before the Congress. And I'm like, yeah, I looked it up, and what they said was come back when you have data, and he never did.
Yeah, and then like Penn and Teller did this beautiful presentation where they run snail slime all over people's faces and tell people that it's going to cure them, or they attach magnets all over their bodies and a lot of these things are not even magnets. They're just lead weights that they strap to these people's bodies and tell them that they're magnets. And then the people will come back and say, well, yeah, I feel 100% better. You've completely cured me. And it's not even a magnet.
Well, that's the other thing, though. If you're doing some process like praying over somebody and then they get better, that doesn't demonstrate that a God got involved. You still have to demonstrate that process is what you're claiming it is.
So, natural remission in the case of cancer or just hallucination in the case of placebo effects, we don't have anything to imply that any faith healer ever, not this guy or the imaginary first century Palestinian that he prays to, ever healed anybody. Nor could they have.
Well, like I said, he does. You can email him. He can provide you with that information.
Why are you calling the show?
Yeah, he doesn't have to provide it to us. He has to provide it to groups like the National Institutes of Health. He has to provide it to groups like the World Health Organization. He has to provide it to groups where he can actually put this into implementable practice and actually help people in a large scale. He just has to show his data, and that would be acceptable. If he could show that what he's doing actually is better than standard treatment, it would be implemented. I guarantee it.
Okay. Well,
even if there's no God, just if he was doing some weird mumbo jumbo and praying and whatever, or anointing, whatever. If it worked better than standard treatment, they would use it, even if they didn't understand the process.
Yeah, no, I just want to throw out one other little dimension on this. If magic was real, and that's what we're talking about right now with faith healing, we're talking about magic. Curses and blessings, these are both magical enchantments. If magic was real, then you would have people like Obi-Wan or Spock or Gandalf who would be able to walk up and demonstrate that. And even if we couldn't explain it, even if science could not explain it, Gandalf and Obi-Wan Kenobi and Spock would be able to demonstrate that this thing is real and it happens even if science can't explain it. But what we have consistently is people who are pretending and who do no better than the chance of rolling dice on a random chance. And that's all they have. The placebo effect at best, where people walk around with pieces of lead attached to them and they think they're magnets and now they think they're cured.
So what I'm hearing is that, and granted, I'm just asking, my wife getting healed of fibro, it being medically verified, and it being completely gone and being gone for over 2.5 years, you call it magic, not God.
No, I wouldn't call it either one.
I'd say it's unexplained.
Yeah, there are reasons.
And the thing is, with fibromyalgia, right, and with all pain, in fact, you have an issue of subjective measurement, right? So people basically say how much pain they have. So there are studies, for example, that show that acupuncture works really well for pain management. But you know what? Fake acupuncture works really well for pain management too. So it's interesting that sticking people with these acupuncture needles, even if you do it in ways that are not prescribed by actual acupuncture, still seems to work. So there's something going on there that we need to investigate that works, but it's not what acupuncturists believe it to be.
Sometimes it's just the amount of attention that you get. I mean, you can do the thing where they do the superheated cups and they do the suction on your back, right?
Yeah.
And yet you just feel that, and the same thing happens when you do, like my mother used to do when I was a little kid.
But I think acupuncture is a great example, though, because it actually works at a pretty good rate. But the thing is, when you get the acupuncturist to use patterns that are not prescribed by acupuncture, it works at about the same rate.
Exactly what I'm saying. So like you go through a ritual of attention to somebody, you know, like and when in my family, when any of the kids had a cold, you would do the Vicks vapor rub, whatever that's supposed to do. You know, you put the T-shirt in the oven as if having a warm T-shirt is supposed to. And then chicken soup, which we know has actually no chemical ability at all. But darn it makes you feel good, right? So now you get pampered a little bit. Now you feel a little better. And so people always attest that, yes, this helped cure me.
Or maybe it keeps you hydrated, right? And you say, like, oh, chicken soup really made them feel better. And it's like, well, it kept them hydrated when they were throwing up, right? I mean, there's all kinds of, it's not necessarily the chicken soup is what helped them. It's just getting liquid into the person and trying to keep liquid down that might help them. You know what I mean? I understand what you're saying, but I'm saying that even in a situation where you give them chicken soup and they actually feel better, they might just be hydrating.
So what I need to know is when somebody switches from an actual medical practice, like the guy that you're talking about, and he switches into a faith healing practice, I need to show that there's documentation that somebody actually suffered for years from this thing, and then he goes through this treatment, and there's some means by which it can work, and then consistently does work.
Right, but we're talking about things like PTSD and fibromyalgia, which is not quite the same as like a broken arm.
Oh, now we're talking about things
right?
that can be treated in a homeopathic hospital.
But I'm just saying, it's like you can't see here's the damage, and now the damage is fixed. You're relying on this subjective assessment, right? When you're dealing with pain management, especially, and that's where I think they say that certain types of alternative treatments tend to do their best is when you're talking about pain management things and things where people have to gauge how well is this working or how much pain do I feel. And you're talking about a process that is a little bit different than there's a broken arm and then I did the faith healing and now it's not broken anymore. Like, does this guy bring back limbs that are missing?
Yeah, I remember this documentary about these pagan faith healers in sub-Saharan Africa somewhere.
Does he do more than like these pain things?
And they're able to cure all kinds of things just by running all of these chants and mantras and dances and things like that. And people, just declare that they're cured, but they're not Christian. So when you tell the Christian that these people are healing people,
sure.
Well, that's the devil's work. Well, how could it be the devil's work if it's healing people? But it's automatically rejected. So by the same bias, I'm going to automatically reject any claim that the Christian makes that, he knows this guy and you can email him and he'll tell you that he heals people. I'm sure he would tell me that he heals people if I were to email him. But if I want to see the data, it's not going to bear out that he's actually doing the deed.
Yeah, and it's not that we don't believe that your spouse feels improved. I mean, I think we totally would be willing to accept that your spouse went in not feeling well or even having a diagnosis of unexplained pain.
And then they smear her with snail slime or Vicks vapor rub or whatever, and then she comes out feeling great.
Snail slime, really?
Well, no, they did a show on that, so I think that's what he's referencing.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's like we could let you go on and do the testimonial, but it really wouldn't address the concerns, I think. I mean, I don't doubt that you have a testimonial. I just doubt that it has the weight that you would hope that it would have with people
it doesn't
who
have
aren't
any weight
believers.
With me. Yeah, it doesn't have any weight at all with me.
Right.
I've seen people testify vehemently to things that they themselves recanted a moment later.
Well, and there's people who get like spontaneous remissions from certain things like cancer. Some people are going to survive these weird, deadly forms of cancer for no explicable reason, whether they're praying or not.
But not spinal cord injuries or amputations. That never happens. You know why that never happens? Because God can't fix those things. Those are beyond his ability. The only things he can ever fix are things that could have naturally fixed themselves.
So you mean to tell me there's healing without a loving God? And
No.
all of these
Well, no. I am, because there's spontaneous remission, which is healing without a loving God. Yes, I will say that.
Yeah, well, the body can recover.
Rats have spontaneous remission in lab experiments. So I think that when you have, and I asked somebody with this once because they were talking about miracles, and I said, well, is God performing miracles on these lab rats? Because some of them are getting, are not coming down with these illnesses or are getting cured of these illnesses even if they're not treated. I mean, even animals can have a spontaneous remission, and I don't think that every spontaneous remission is a miracle. I think sometimes people just get better for reasons we can't explain.
He also mentioned something else. He said a loving God. So we know we're not talking about the Christian God now.
Right. That's true.
I'm talking about Jesus.
Well, then, no, you said loving God, and that doesn't work. Because remember, Jesus was not the kind of guy you want to get medical advice from. Jesus was the guy that said that it doesn't matter what a man takes into his mouth, that will not corrupt him. The only thing that matters is what comes out of his mouth, that will corrupt him. So he believed in magic words, and he believed in curing people of demon possession. So you don't get medical advice from Jesus. Jesus doesn't cure people.
Right. You get salvation, you get love, you get
salvation
healing.
That's a whole other different subject, that Jesus doesn't save you from himself by believing in him, because he had to sacrifice himself to himself so that he could finally forgive you for being what he made you be.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is, it's like, okay, so spontaneous remission is what you're calling it, comes from something that you just can't explain. It doesn't come
No,
from
it doesn't.
God.
It doesn't necessarily come from what we can't explain. The body has mechanisms.
An immune system, yeah. And if your immune system does kick in and do the job for something like a weird form of cancer, I did use the phrase, can't explain. And sometimes it's just like, that's the thing where it's like, I don't know why sometimes people just get better from cancer, right? But we do have an immune system.
And you understand that when science can't explain something, that doesn't mean that magic does explain it, right?
Magic doesn't explain anything.
Jesus explains it.
No,
Jesus
it doesn't.
equals magic.
It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't explain
it.
That's
where we're going to disagree, is that that unknown variable.
No, even if you're saying Jesus does it, that's not an explanation.
Yeah, and
how you'd have to explain exactly how it was done.
Whatever science can't explain is thus unexplained. It is not explained by magic/Jesus.
Okay, so here's what I can tell you, because again,
you can tell me lots of things, but you'll be wrong about most of them.
Well, again, that's subject to what people believe and what people know. What I do know is the whole acupuncture thing, it didn't work for my wife. The whole pain med thing, it didn't work for my wife. The water therapy, the professionals, the doctors.
And yet acupuncture worked at a rate that was very close to pain medication. So that's weird.
Right,
See, so your wife is the anomaly.
But it never took it.
Right.
It never took it.
Wait, she never took it?
Jesus, that it was gone.
Wait.
Without
she never did acupuncture, or she did?
No, she never did it. She did.
Then what does it mean to say it didn't work for her if she didn't do it?
What I'm saying is that's a temporal thing.
So the body has natural immune systems.
It's not a permanent healing. Go ahead.
The body has natural immune systems. The body is constantly trying to heal itself by actual physical means, using white blood cells and so forth. And very often, this actually works, even in cases of cancer. So what you're saying is that in any case where the body's natural ability to correct its own ills is effective, you want to blame a first-century faith healer.
No, I want to blame a loving God that created it.
I'm sorry. You
said
keep mentioning
Jesus.
Yeah, you keep mentioning a loving God, but Jesus is not a loving God.
Where did the immune system come from then? Where did the immune system come? You're saying
evolution.
Natural evolution from monkeys.
Well, we are still monkeys. Yes.
From a monkey.
Yeah, we are still monkeys. So yes.
From God, we get immune systems from apes and monkeys.
Not from we are still monkeys, and so we have defective monkey genes and all of that, and so that we're still monkeys. So yes. Whereas the magic invisible friend that you're talking about has no evidence to exist, we can prove that we are monkeys.
We can prove that we are monkeys.
We are monkeys. Not that we came from monkeys, but that we are still monkeys right now.
We are still monkeys right now.
Exactly.
Well, there you go. You've replaced God with monkeys.
Well, good, because I've replaced something not real with something real.
So because you don't believe God is real, you'd rather believe in a monkey than a loving God?
It has nothing to do with what I would rather believe. Being honest with myself, I cannot believe in a loving God and also call him Jesus at the same time, because your Bible does not describe a loving God.
I'm just trying to understand the logic behind that, because it wasn't until we said the name of Jesus that she got healed. And it sounds like you want to give credit to everything but what really,
I don't give credit to anything until I know. That's the point. Well, you don't make assumptions.
But that's what I do know. There's several witnesses to this. It didn't just
several witnesses to what?
Happen. How can I
show me the peer-reviewed data? We're talking about medical data now. Show me peer-reviewed medical data. If you don't have that, then what you have is a handful of people who don't know dick about Jack, who made up stuff.
Even though one of them's a doctor.
Even though one of them stopped being a doctor and became a faith healer, which means he's a professional fraud. Yes.
I wouldn't call my wife Experience a fraud. You might.
I would. If it's a faith healer, then it's a fraud, by definition.
But it hasn't come back. How is that
but
fraud?
They can't heal anything like what we talked about before with
right.
cervical
They
injuries
can't.
or Jesus can't do squat for cervical injuries or not cervical spinal injuries.
I watched him do it.
No, you didn't ever watch a paraplegic suddenly redevelop their spinal cord so they could walk again. No, you did not ever see that. Nor did you ever see an amputee grow their limb back. No, you did not ever see that. You bought into a very low-level scam and believed it because you don't know how to think rationally. And I don't mean to be insulting, but that's honestly what happened.
Well, listen, I don't blame you for feeling upset, because it sounds like the problem is you're kind of upset with God. You'd rather believe a monkey.
How could I be upset with Pinocchio? Why would Pinocchio piss me off? Why do I hate Pinocchio? I obviously don't hate Pinocchio. He doesn't exist.
Well, here's my point. If you're truly confident in what you believe, why would you raise your voice to begin with?
Because he's probably upset with somebody scamming people.
Yeah.
In the same way that I was upset with the guy who offered the alternative treatment. As much as I kept my mouth shut because I knew it made my friend feel better.
Let me give you an idea.
It killed me that she was giving money to a guy who was scamming her. And I don't even know that the doctor who was scamming her didn't actually believe his own crap. Right? He may have actually believed it, but the fact is he didn't have the data, and he could not say with confidence that what he was doing was helping. But she needed to feel like she was doing something, and so she was handing money to this man. And whether he believed it or not, might have an impact on how much I judge him as an evil person. But it has no impact on whether or not she was scammed. She was scammed.
Yeah, understand that I used to be a grandparent. Do you understand what that means? Mm-hmm. And I'm not a grandparent anymore. You get me?
Yeah, it means your grandchild died.
Yeah, I get you, brother. I hear you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, leukemia. And when somebody tells me that they're going to pray for me, put their hand on their shoulder and want me to feel better, tell me they're going to pray for me to the same magic imaginary friend that you have, and I have to tell them, no, I don't save your prayers, because I've noticed that they don't begin to work until the chemo starts flowing. And then, if there's a relapse, your God is powerless and can't do anything.
That's a no. That's the no, right? That's the fail rate.
Okay, see.
So all these families, all these different people who all believe in God, all praying vehemently for my granddaughter, everybody pleading to God to spare her life. And what does God do? God doesn't do anything because God isn't real.
Well, here's the thing. Here's something that might be a good idea, John. Why don't you contact this guy who helped your wife and tell him that he needs to present his data in a paper to the World Health Organization and to the National Institutes of Health. And he needs to show them that he has the research and he has the data that demonstrates that his treatments for PTSD and for fibromyalgia are better than the standard treatments, and that they should be implemented going forward as the new standard treatment for these illnesses.
Now, many other atheists will say that it's impossible to hate a fictional character, so they can't really hate God. But I have to tell you, I hated Cinderella's wicked stepmother in the Disney movie, so it's possible to hate a fictional character. But that's not my issue here. My issue is that there's no truth to what you're saying. There's nothing we can show to be true, and that's what truth means.
I want to say that, though. It's like, ask him if he's presented this data, if he's written it up in any sort of like research methodology, and if he has tried to present this to the World Health Organization and National Institutes of Health, and if not, why not? Has he submitted this to JAMA? Right? The Journal of American Medical Association. Like, is he presenting this to the groups where his work could do the most good if it is legitimate? Like, why would you call the Atheist Experience? Why not tell him, hey, submit this to a peer-reviewed journal, show them your data, prove to them that this works, and then we can start healing people in mass.
And for thousands of years, people have used the most ridiculous remedies that their physicians had suggested, in primitive times, because they didn't actually know the mechanisms or why things would work or would not work. So when like with Darwin, for example, for whatever medical conditions he had, where they had to douse him with ice water and all like this, or when they used to treat people with leeches and all of that, because they have no idea. They're just shooting in the dark for whatever cure they can get. But if there really was a God, don't you think that this loving God that you talk about would have given us some kind of a clue as to what a microorganism is or why things get infected and how to treat those things? Why did we get no information about that at all whatsoever?
Well, the Bible does touch on that. He said man's understanding would become more.
Right.
And there was
if the Bible had been written by God, man's understanding would be more, but the Bible was not written by God.
I'm getting a little hung up on this point that I was making earlier, though. If I found out that for reasons I couldn't explain, I could lay hands on people and heal them, I would subject myself to any test that anybody wants to put in front of me. And I would allow any medical practitioner to use me in a way that helps them show that I don't know what I'm doing or how I'm doing, or maybe I think it's Jesus or aliens, or it doesn't even matter. If I can regrow amputated limbs, I'm going to go and do that. And if I can show that I can do it, I'm going to let them use me to do it.
You come to Children's Cancer Center,
right?
Pat. You come to Children's Cancer Center in Dallas, and you go into their hallway. You go into the visiting room where the children get to play with the toys, and you lay hands on any of these kids,
right?
And 6 out of 7 of the kids that you touch survive.
Yeah.
You're hired.
Exactly.
We don't care. We don't.
So I guess the question for me, John, is maybe you need to reach out to this guy and ask him why he hasn't done this.
I was going to say, I'm not sure. I'll be honest. I'm not sure if he has or not.
Then he would be the new guy doing it. This is what we would be doing. If this worked, this is what we would be doing.
First of all, what I can't speak across this whole broad spectrum. What I can do is I can definitely ask him. That's not going to be an issue, number one. Number two, he didn't take a penny from me or my wife.
That's
not a dime.
Fine. That's fine. I mean, that's whatever. But he's earning a living somehow. Right, and he doesn't work psychiatry anymore, so what's he doing?
Well, actually, he does. I mean, he still does marriage counseling and stuff like that. Of course, he still uses it. It's not all, bad.
I mean, he's charging somebody. He's just not charging your wife. But the point is,
it's a ministry. He doesn't take a dime. Go ahead.
Then how does he pay his bills?
I thought a ministry takes lots of dimes.
Because people, well, how do I put this? It's love that motivates us to give, and of course some people will donate, but he doesn't ask for to just give.
Got it. Understood.
He takes donations, which is, I mean, that's fine. If that's what he's doing, that's fine. He's taking donations, whatever, but he is taking money.
Of course he takes donations, because you don't have to report those.
You got to get funded.
That's what I just said. That's fine, but don't tell me that he's not taking money. He's not getting paid for this. And yes, we get paid, but you know what? You can see the results of what we're doing. We're not saying that we're giving people magic cures. We're telling people that we're doing this show, and they're promoting the show, and when they give the money, they can actually watch the show and know that the money went to doing the show.
By receiving donations, he doesn't have to pay taxes on it. Got it.
We don't either. I mean, to be fair. But the point is, I would say, I want to know why, if he has the data that you're saying that he has, he is not the new standard protocol. That's what I want to know more than anything. So yeah.
Truthfully, I have an answer.
Check with him and find out, and post it at freethoughtblogs.com/AXP and let us know what he says, because I'm totally curious about that.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see that data. And if there actually was data, it wouldn't matter if I never looked at the site. Other people whom I respect who would call my attention to that if there was some legitimacy to what you're saying.
Well, of course there's legitimacy. My wife's healed. I was there.
Yeah, I mean, he's saying that it's legitimate that he had this experience, that she had this experience. I get it. It's fine.
Right, and so they don't know what the real explanation is, so they assume that it was magic.
No, the explanation is Jesus.
Which is magic.
Which needs to be demonstrated.
If you want to call Jesus magic, then sure.
Yeah, the supernatural,
if you could explain it,
supernatural faith healing, magic by definition. Blesses, curses, magic by definition.
Put yourself in my shoes. Suppose your wife was healed and you believed in a loving God. How would you go about explaining God?
Well, I'd be trying to figure out why all the contradictions in the Bible that says that it's clearly not a loving God, and the God in the Bible would not have cured my wife anyway. So I'd have to change religion to find one that was a loving God.
So what Jesus did in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and
he was a faith healer who was trying to take money from people and said that he can't get any attention or worship in his own hometown where they know where the scammy is, so he has to go someplace else.
Well, according to
don't
the Bible,
talk to me about Jesus. Jesus was a first century faith healer, was just as much of a scam artist as any faith healer we have now.
But where does it say that in the Bible? That's not
everywhere that it talks about Jesus. The four Gospels specifically.
Even the Quran, which is a Muslim faith, speaks well of Jesus. Well, where do you?
Of course it does. It says that Jesus comes out of his house every day to go cure people in long lines, and people will come to Jesus and ask for the truth of God, and then Jesus will say that he's not the final prophet, that Muhammad is the final prophet, because Jesus was appropriated, just like the Christian version of Jesus was appropriated from John the Baptist. You have an adapted character that was taken from somebody else's religion. He is not and was not ever real.
You mean the prophet of God who dressed in camel's hair and prepared the way of the Lord? He was supposed to be the front runner. Jesus to explain.
I can't cure all your ills. There's nothing else I can do to help you.
Look, I'm going to say, let's just go ahead and say that you're going to follow up with the guy that healed your wife, and you're going to ask about what he's ever done with this data. Has he compiled it in a way that he can submit it to World Health Organization, National Institutes of Health, and has?
Hold on.
Yeah.
Thing that really. I want to write those down.
Sure. It's just WHO, and then NIH, the National Institutes of Health, and World Health Organization. I would say that if he can cure PTSD at a rate that is better than chance, that is better than the standard treatments, then he should be reaching out to try to help people. Like in a broad way.
If you had that ability...
Well, he helps thousands.
I understand, but what I'm saying is if he can show this through actual research data, if he can take this information and actually demonstrate it in a research paper...
Okay, so your guy helps thousands by your own statement. He helps thousands of people. So what hospital does he work at?
No, he's at the House of Healing in Phoenix, Arizona.
If he doesn't work at a hospital, then he doesn't heal thousands of people.
Well, I beg to differ. He healed my wife.
I bet we can prove otherwise.
Heal my wife.
Well, we're gonna let John follow up. We're gonna let John follow up. So go ahead and find out, like, if he's
So where was Jesus? Where was Jesus with my granddaughter?
You know what, brother? I have a word for you. If it's yours, receive it. If it's not, shoe doesn't fit, kick it off. But your daughter's with the Lord. Your daughter's happier than she could ever been.
Yeah, this is probably not going anywhere good.
Yeah, it's really easy to make up a nice platitude that has no truth to it. But it's really offensive when you tell somebody who doesn't believe in your magic imaginary friend that when real life situations happen, that there's some magical solution and that she's an angel and she's looking down at you. It's really insulting to the real life situations that we've had to live through.
Yeah, I think this is part of what Aron is saying about the immorality of the religion, is the idea that, for example, you're sitting here saying that it's good that a child died. And so
I didn't say it was good.
You're saying that she's with God?
Well, no, I said it was horrible that the child died. What I said is that...
So why couldn't God do anything about it?
So how did a loving God allow that to happen?
It's a loving God. All of our grandparents are...
Because the book of Job says that anything to do with kill, steal, and destroy is the devil. It's not God.
Okay.
The problem is something
done.
painful happens.
Yeah, and the devil reigns free because God allows it. Let's just move on. You're going to check with this guy. You're going to find out if he has published research, submitted it for JAMA, what was the result, and that's JAMA. Has he tried to submit this for the National Institutes of Health? Has he tried to submit it to the World Health Organization? Has he tried to spread this healing around? And if so, what kind of research has he actually put together? What has he submitted? And what were the results? And if you could just post that at the blog, that would be great. It might take a day or two for your first post to go through, and then after that, you can post at will. I want to thank.
What's your website for public?
The blog is going to be freethoughtblogs.com/AXP.
Clearly.
Free Thought blog. What was the rest of it?
/AXP for Atheist Experience. Okay.
Okay. Free Thought blog.
At AXP. And Free Thought blogs, but you can also go to the Atheist Experience website, and there's a link to the blog there. That might be the easiest way to get to it.
Okay, so any publication I can get put on the blog. Got it.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you, John.
Nope, thank you guys. Appreciate it. Love you guys, and thank you so much.
All right, later on.